In at 10, same path. Now, part of the strategy behind the FNAF games is that the animatronics will always follow the same route every time, or I guess rather they'll come towards you the same way every time. In FNAF 1 specifically, Bonnie always comes down the left hall, while Chica and Freddy always go down the right side, and the same remains true for the rest of the games, which technically, if you think about it, means that these characters are coded this way. If they were just free roaming, that would be one thing, but the fact that they come after you and do so the same way each time would suggest that this is actually intentional. I mean, yeah, sure, twice is a coincidence, but don't they say that 3 is a pattern? Well, it's the same thing here, okay? In multiple games, the animatronics come down the same path every time. FNAF 1, FNAF 2, FNAF 4, Ultimate Custom Night, and not even just that, but the fact that the animatronics do this multiple times within the same game. Hell, how many times does Bonnie come at you down the left hall in one night, let alone throughout the whole week that you play? So yeah, we would have to logically ignore this detail because it would muddy everything else up way too much. And we have been, actually. In at 9, 1987 Easter egg. At the end of every FNAF game, there is a bonus night. It gives you a bit more lore clues and more scares, and that's what we consider the 6th night. But then after beating it, you unlock a special 7th night where you can customize the level of the animatronics and give them specific difficulty ratings to see how you can actually handle those certain scenarios. However, if you were to do this with Five Nights 1, you'd obviously be looking for more clues since we literally had nothing else, and we were trying to figure out what would first be an incredible series of games. But if you tried to solve anything and you tried to be a little sneaky to figure out what that whole bite thing was about, and you put the animatronic levels to be 1987 in that order, like 1, 9, 8, and 7, the year of the bite, you'd end up getting instantly jump scared by Golden Freddy. Which is funny, but it could have had deeper implications. If you look at it through the lens of every detail means something, if you end up really thinking about it, and probably too much, you can end up seeing this as an implication that maybe Golden Freddy caused the bite of 87, and that Jeremy Fitzgerald, who we would play as in FNAF 2, who many assume to be the bite victim, could be the one possessing the animatronic. At least if we ignore that the whole missing children's incident thing takes place 2 years prior. But then again, that's just something else that we would have to ignore, so it still works. In at 8, Death Coin. In Ultimate Custom Night, you are able to get an item called a Death Coin. This allows you to use it and eliminate any animatronic from the game. This works with most animatronics. It removes them from play, and then you won't have to deal with them for the rest of that playthrough, or I guess technically life. I'm not really sure how Ultimate Custom Night defines things. But there is, at least to my knowledge, one animatronic that this coin does not work on, that being Golden Freddy. If you try it on Golden Freddy and you use the death coin on him, you end up getting jump scared by the Fredbear plush, who some believe is meant to be Psychic Friend Fredbear. And while it would make sense that you can't remove Golden Freddy because seemingly they'd be the one controlling everything, or the animatronic that gives you the most grief depending on the situation you believe is taking place, the fact that Fredbear is the one that jump scares you, the actual like plush, has to kind of be taken with a grain of salt. Because honestly, it may not have that deep of an impact. And if it did, we have really no idea what the hell that would be. Especially when Ultimate Custom Night seemingly tried to wrap up the Afton family storyline. In its 7, Vanny Cam. We can also see 6 monitors on the poster which have multiple images of security cameras and Gregory on them. Across the 6 monitors, there are 4 total images that appear, with the bottom 2 being the odd ones out, and the 4 above that being 2 different images. One of Gregory looking surprised, and another of Vanny looking at the security camera that's glitching out. Very reminiscent of the iconic Bigfoot image that's very blurry, where he's walking like this. And I think that this is actually one of Scott's clever tricks, like how he used the keypad and sister location to tell us that Crying Child and FNAF 4 take place in 1983. I think that Scott or Steel Wool is doing the same thing with this poster. By glitching Vanny out on screen, they're showing us that either A, Vanny was the entity that Gregory was talking to that was mentioned in the therapy tapes, or B, that Gregory having his vision glitch out when she is nearby is due to Gregory being a robot. It could be either, but it could also be both, considering how these are both next to pictures of Gregory looking surprised, and they're on both sides of the screen. 2 pictures, 2 eyes. This is the real 2-eye theory. In its 6, brightness. As always, the first thing you do when you see any FNAF promo art or any image that's related to FNAF at all, you go and brighten it to find more details or maybe even some secrets. And the first thing that I noticed is that there aren't any question marks on this poster. Thank God. But there's also quite a few things that got revealed to me. Firstly, at the top there are actually 2 windows on the poster instead of the one that just seems to show up in the original. These windows also look like they are angry eyes, which could indicate an overarching villain. There are also a very faint set of eyes in the top right corner as well, aside not including the ones on the left that are clearly visible, but the ones on the right could just be an anomaly since they are very faint. And I also see that the girl in the middle doesn't have any color on her aside from her shoes. More on that later. And the floor also cuts off at the bottom, but the rocks on top of them don't. Mostly because at this point the ground has pretty much faded into black, but the rocks would still kind of be visible. But seriously, this girl is in black and white. Halfway through in number 5, collapse. One of the big questions we, or at the very least I, had after Security Breach was what part of the Pizzaplex collapsed after the cave-in during the true ending. And it was really up in the air whether it was the entire Pizzaplex or just Roxy's Raceway. I guess they kinda left it that way depending on what they wanted to do. But this poster and the title confirms that the Pizzaplex itself is in ruins. The whole place is a ruin. The giant Freddy statue from the lobby is destroyed and there's rubble everywhere. There are still some questions, of course, like it is just an illustration after all. How's the rest of the Pizzaplex doing, for instance? What happened to the other animatronics? What's the main goal of this DLC? But while the latter may have been answered thanks to another detail from the poster, I don't think we'll have any answers for a while. The DLC doesn't come out until next year, which is absolutely insane, but at least it's free. And at 4, eyes. And while Gregory's eyes may be robotic, there's another set that I would like to point out in this Security Breach Ruins poster. The red eyes in the top left corner of the screen. Now, this is very clearly Vanny, but since I've seen a few people get confused by this, let me explain why. The eyes are red, which we only really see Vanny have, since Burntrap's eyes glow purple, and the animatronic eyes don't really glow. We also know that Vanny might have been able to survive the collapse due to her being controlled by Afton, but also because she was able to be on the roof before us when the fire starts in the rooftop ending. I mean, she gets pushed off the roof by Freddy, but we know that she was up there before us somehow, so I'm sure that she would have found a way around a collapse. Plus, if she's on the security cameras and the other showcased person is Gregory, who we know is alive, it just makes sense for Vanny to be alive. Plus again, red eyes. And they're in a similar position to where Vanny was placed in her first poster appearance as the Shadow. You know, like the one where Freddy's rocking out and then there's like a bunny chick with a knife that we were like, who's that? Yeah, it's in roughly the same area. It's not in the same place exactly, but it's in the same vicinity. Again, getting close to the end, and at number 3, Fire Dave. Found in one of the various lore duffel bags that we can stumble upon in Security Breach, it's a customer complaint titled Hi Dave, which upon inspection reads, quote, customer complaint, you should fire Dave, he sucks. And while it is short and sweet and to the point, it's also seemingly a reference to the Fnaf novels, since if you're unaware, in the novels William Afton was introduced, but at first he was going by the alias of Dave Miller, and considering how this customer says that you should fire Dave, I think that's a pretty telling way to reference the book's most infamous employee. And it's also a reference to the fact that Afton is in the Pizzaplex right below our noses, or I guess technically our feet. Though we would have to ignore this detail because it's not really going to have much more of an impact than that, just being a reference. It's just gonna be a guy named Dave, okay? No connection to anyone else. Especially since, again, this game was from Steel Wool and not just Scott Coppin, which is where most people tend to use the whole idea of, if Scott put it in the game, it has to mean something. But if you wanna say that, and you don't wanna listen to literally anything else I've said on this list, this was made by Steel Wool, so can't really use that here. But ultimately, in at number 2, Jeremy. If you spend too much time looking into names, then you're really going to be in for a crapshoot when it comes to Fnaf. Considering how Scott has used the first name Jeremy way too many times for a fanbase as detail attentive as this one. Because the name Jeremy has been used for the first night guard from Fnaf 2, the victim who possesses Bonnie, and the first Freddy Fazbear virtual experience game tester who ends up cutting his face off because Glitchtrap got to him. If you really want to think that Scott puts every single detail in this and like it's meant for those details to all mean something special, how do you explain this? Okay, most of the time people just write this off as a troll, which means that if this is a troll, other things could be trolls too, right? You can't just say that everything means something aside from the Jeremy thing. That just doesn't make any form of logical sense. And you know what? It doesn't even make a form of unlogical sense. Since if anything, the name being used 3 times would be more important than like passing comments made in one game, right? Exactly. But it doesn't mean anything, okay? Bonnie isn't getting resurrected multiple times. Jeremy isn't Satan or something like that. It's just a name. It's not that deep. Finally, in at number 1, Immortal and the Restless. This detail is the reason I made this entire list. This is one comment that I've been seeing time and time again. The Immortal and the Restless was a show to show us that Afton didn't want his kid or kids, so this theory makes no sense. These details and all the others are put in there for a reason. But like, we just went over 9 details that we have to ignore either in general for things to make sense or for your certain line of thinking to make sense. Or that we've just been ignoring the whole time, meaning that we can't take every single pixel of a scene into account when trying to find the big picture. The Immortal and the Restless has never popped up again after Sister Location. There has never been another instance of that show having any significance other than just being something we watched after work in that game. It didn't reveal the mother's name, it didn't reveal that Afton never wanted his son, because if he never wanted Crying Child, why would he have sworn to put him back together? Or revealed to Michael that Elizabeth was possessed, or literally anything else that we've seen happen in this series. It just doesn't make sense. The Immortal and the Restless shows up less often than the name Jeremy. And honestly, it has just as little significance as the name. It was a soap opera, okay? What I watch on TV doesn't mirror my life or my family's situation unless it's Dr. Phil, and why would it mean that William didn't want Crying Child? Why couldn't it be that William thought his wife was having an affair? Maybe if this does have significance, it's meant to show that William snapped and killed his wife when Crying Child was born because he didn't think that it was his son. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for coming to my Fred Talk. Schooled. And at 10, Cover Shadow. I recently purchased the Freddy Files Updated Edition book off Amazon and find what details really seem to be the most important. It's also an excellent place to find confirmed details. But one thing I noticed a while after getting the book was that the shadow on the front cover. If you look closely, you can actually make out the shape of Freddy standing behind you, which I have to say is pretty damn terrifying. This implies that basically anyone who learns about the Fazbear secrets because of this book, which is presented to be some form of secret files on the cover, will get gotten by Fredbear. This makes me think that there is certainly something more to this company, definitely something shady that we aren't really considering, or that just hasn't been presented yet. But it very well might not be that deep, but let's be honest, with Scott, it probably is. In at 9, Nightmare's Endo. Now this was pointed out to me last time, because in part 12 I mentioned how Nightmare seemingly has a brain, but many people were very quick to point out that actually that's Nightmare's endoskeleton. And you can actually see it specifically in Fnaf VR, and it's actually true, which is just weird and just freaking insane, because like he's a dream. Why would he need an endoskeleton? Anyway, apparently the animatronic was used in Ennard's VR minigame, and I can't seem to find the particular situation where he's there, but I'm sure it's in there, since if you check the animatronic gallery, available after you complete the main game, not including the tape endings, you can see the animatronic right there, clear as day, clearly listed being present in the game files. So that was something I never really knew about, and I'm glad that I found out. So thank you for bringing this to my attention. If you have any more details, feel free to comment them or message me on Instagram. Messaging me is a more direct way to getting the information to me, however, because I do read the comments, but it may take a while. And at 8, Funtime Chica Remnant. Now this point seems like it would be obvious, but not anymore, thanks to some recently revealed information. In the Fnaf novels, once Afton discovers that the original animatronics are possessed, he melts their endoskeletons down, resulting in the creation of Remnant, basically molten possessed metal. But then he takes this metal and uses it to give life to the Funtime animatronics. So if there is indeed a Funtime Chica, does this mean that she got the same treatment? Because if she did, which it seems to imply that she does, then the original 5 missing children didn't have all their Remnant burned, meaning that the FNAF 6 fire was pointless and Henry, along with our character, died for nothing because the mission wasn't complete. I mean, I think Henry would have taken this into account, but maybe Ennard just figured that he didn't need Chica to handle it. I mean, you can purchase a Funtime Chica for the restaurant in FNAF 6, but if you choose not to, does that mean that you end up ruining the story? I don't know, since in FNAF AR's Fast Facts, it's revealed that the Funtimes were among the first animatronics made by Afton. So maybe in the continuity of the games, the Funtime animatronics don't contain the souls of the original 5 missing children, like at all, unless it was just like injecting the metal here and there instead of making whole endoskeletons out of it, so it could have been done later. I don't know. And it's 7, Joy of Creation. There are actually some references to some of the Fazbear Fanverse Initiative games in Security Breach. For example, the Joy of Creation Easter egg of Ignited Freddy and Ignited Bonnie, found on the House of Bear and House of Bear 2 arcade cabinets found around the Pizzaplex. This is something that I actually picked up on my first time through, so needless to say, it was pretty cool that I was right about that. I was like, hey, isn't that Ignited Freddy? And it was. And the House of Bear cabinet has like the Ignited Freddy shadow standing in the doorway, and then the House of Bear 2 machine features Ignited Bonnie's face, which could be considered Withered Bonnie, but given the context of the Ignited Freddy in the first one, I'm gonna have to say it's Ignited Bonnie. But if you really want to think about this, this could explain how like the Fazbear games fit into the timeline, since the Fanverse could be the games that Scott's In-Universe counterpart made, which would explain why they would have their own FNAF 1 titled FNAF Plus. But honestly, we're probably meant to ignore this idea, because let's be honest, if that was the FNAF 1 of this universe, the company wouldn't have arcade cabinets featuring the characters. So this is probably just meant to be like a happy little reference for fans of that series and nothing more. Plus, it's Steelwool who was doing that, and not Scott. And at 6, Crashing. Golden Freddy has some weird abilities, okay? Like, what's with the whole crashing us to the desktop thing? Every other animatronic sends us to the main menu, but Golden Freddy for some reason sends us to our desktop. It's a very odd detail that I don't think anyone was really questioning, but it certainly seems to indicate that there could be something special about the character. Well, I mean, something more. And I don't think that it's simply maybe they're just angrier than everyone else and something like that. It would have to be more symbolic, because the only character that, when killing us, crashes us to our desktop is Nightmare from FNAF 4. They're the only 2 animatronics to crash us to the desktop instead of to the main menu, and while with Golden Freddy it may not make much sense, with Nightmare having the same ability, it may set a baseline for what's really actually happening when this happens. Nightmare in FNAF 4 is representative of death. When Nightmare gets us, we crash to the desktop in that game and truly die, which would mean that the same would have to be true for Golden Freddy, right? But then, that would make a whole load of other things messy if you want to assume that Golden Freddy is a real animatronic and possessed by Cassidy, who also is possessing William. So, you would have to ignore that detail if you're going down that route. Halfway through into number 5, Ultimate Custom Night Roster. If you want to go down the path of Cassidy being the one you should not have killed, that's fine with me, as long as you don't use that path of thinking to insult anyone who thinks otherwise. Since, after all, nothing is truly proven with this series literally ever. But, if you do believe that, for some reason Cassidy is possessing William to keep him alive to continue suffering, you kind of have to ignore the animatronics present in Ultimate Custom Night, because there is no possible way that Cassidy could know about the Nightmare animatronics. It doesn't make sense if she did. Crying Child is the one who's seeing these nightmares in his coma while in the hospital in FNAF 4, as evidenced by the flatline that we hear at the end of the game. And since he dies before waking up, he wouldn't be able to share this information with anyone. You can say that he let Cassidy know about them while they were sharing Golden Freddy or something, but that's you ignoring other details in the series. And if Cassidy wasn't Golden Freddy, how could she also be possessing William? You'd again be ignoring every other detail that we've learned about possession. And why are the animatronics calling the one you should not have killed him if it is Cassidy? Cassidy is a female in this universe, as evidenced by her counterpart in the novel trilogy and the only other human in the logbook. And if you want to say that they're saying him because of Golden Freddy, again, how could she be possessing both? And why would she make these animatronics that she is creating call her him? If she's mad about being killed, why would she be referring to herself by her animatronic? Okay, it doesn't make sense. Unless Cassidy is possessing William as the vengeful spirit, and the one you should not have killed is Crying Child, who Cassidy is using to torment William. But even still, for this to work, you'd have to ignore the nightmares being present in that game. And at 4, Nightmares in VR. On that same line of thinking, how are the Nightmare animatronics present in FNAF VR? If we are to assume that FNAF 4 is an actual canon plot point in the series, then these animatronics being present would be impossible. The only way that this could make sense would be if FNAF 4 specifically was one of the games that Scott's In-Universe counterpart made. That's the only way that Fazbear Entertainment would know what these animatronics look like. And it would explain why they would be present in the game that they're using to say like, yeah, this happened, but we're better now. Since they're trying to rebuild their reputation as we learn in this game. But that also calls into question every other game that we've played, because FNAF 1, 2, 3, parts of 4, and even sister location animatronics are in FNAF VR, which would mean that if they remade FNAF 4 because it was an in-universe game, every other FNAF game before this or even before FNAF 6 would be just that. Getting close to the end into number 3, Sentience? Now, turning to the Fazbear Frights books for this number, could the animatronics actually know what they're doing? Or is this just their agony acting out? Quote from Dr. Phineas Taggart from the Book 3 epilogue, that you can take a saturation of agony at any kind of intelligence, even an artificial one, and they will combine together to transmute the energy of emotion into the energy of physical action. So it seems that Phineas believes that the emotion is what dictates the actions, not the individual who the emotions came from. This could explain the rash behavior of the animatronics and why they seem like they're in pain. It's not the children controlling them, it's the agony. The actual spirits don't have any reasoning behind their movements, they just go. That's why Elizabeth wants to make her dad proud, because while in agony she can't think straight. We just do, we're impulsive. That's what's going on with these animatronics. And we know that Phineas must be right, since he proves his thesis by creating the Stitch Wraith, which promptly kills him because it's full of the agony of multiple different things, not just one individual. Damn, a whole lot of things seem to be coming together. Penultimately, in at number 2, Fnaf 4 VR. The series of minigames known as Night Terrors in Fnaf VR is based on Fnaf 4. We know this thanks to the appearances from Nightmare Eon and Nightmare Fredbear, as well as just the design of the room. But my question is, how do they know what this room looks like? And how do they know what these animatronics look like, for that matter? We're meant to believe that Fnaf 4 takes place inside Crying Child's brain in 1983 while he's in the hospital. So how could they possibly know what these look like? It's the same reasoning why I thought Mike had to be the Crying Child, because of the drawing of Nightmare in the survival logbook. But Crying Child dies after experiencing these nightmares, so how could anyone have ever been described these animatronics or these locations? We know the dream house isn't like his real house thanks to the 8-bit minigame, so how did they get this model? Did they have a visualizer in the hospital room? Because we can't even see our dreams in 2021, let alone 1983. If you have any explanations, please let me know in the comments, because it can't be the sound discs. Okay? It can't be. He was in the hospital. There was nothing to actually alter the appearance of. Doesn't make sense. Finally, in at number 1, explosive ending. William dies in The Man in Room 1280, the third story from the 5th Fazbear Frights book. Quite extravagantly, from what we're told, exploding into a pile of mush right before a pastor's eyes. But how is this possible? How could William just explode like that? It's not something that you think about, but I have quite the explanation. I will admit it's a bit of a leap, but bear with me. William knew about possession and maybe how it worked. He knew about agony after his daughter got scooped and his son got crunched. So, what if he tried to ensure his survival by intentionally causing himself agony, injecting or installing some form of explosive that, when triggered or when in the vicinity of a Fazbear warehouse, would cause him to explode from the inside out, creating what possibly is one of the most agonizing ways to die, even for the Fnaf series. I mean, this guy was absolutely mental, even potentially injecting himself with Remnant in an effort to stay alive. So for me, it isn't out of the question for William to just shove an explosive inside him just to make sure that his goal was achieved. I mean, I hope that pastor didn't get a mouthful of, like, William guts. That doesn't sound fun. In at 10, the real protagonist. Orville the Elephant in Ultimate Custom Night is one of the animatronics that's pretty memeable. Like, not as memeable as some of his counterparts perhaps, but he does give us a lot of information if you are paying attention. Take this one line from Ultimate Custom Night for example. He tried to release you, he tried to release us, but I won't let that happen. I will keep you here, I will hold you here, no matter how many times they burn us. But like, wait, hold on a second. If this is really the voice of the one you should not have killed, whether you consider that Cassidy or Crying Child, then why would he say he tried to release you, he tried to release us? Henry was the one who tried to release William in Fnaf 6, and if you want to assume that it's Cassidy, we know that the one Cassidy is referring to, since they said I won't let that happen, would have to be Henry, because that's the one who released William. So, could it be that we've been playing as Henry this whole time with the exception of Sister Location and Fnaf 4? I mean, like, we don't really release any souls in Sister Location, right? That would then mean that Henry was Mike Schmidt, and that the Mike who owned the logbook could be Henry, or I guess would be Henry, and then that we'd be reading it as Michael Afton? Man, that's a whole load of messed up. I don't want to deal with that. Speaking of messed up, only 19% of the people who watch these videos are actually subscribed, alright? You might not know that you're not subscribed. So, do me a favor before we keep going, check the subscribe button, and if it's red, make it gray, alright? Gray is a much better color than red anyway, okay? Red is all anger. Make it gray, alright? You're welcome. And a 9, intentional glitch. Glitch Trap is an odd character, an accidental addition to Fnaf VR that somehow ends up interacting with the environment and altering aspects of the game. Why? I've always questioned why Glitch Trap is able to move around the curtain and even seemingly put us in a Freddy suit at the end of the game. Like sure, he's a spirit, technically, I guess maybe, actually not even at this point since we've learned things later on, but he's still game code either way, right? And like he would have to obey the laws of being game code. Like any being must obey the laws of the form they inhabit. How is he able to move things like the curtain when I can't, alright? I'm also code in this game. I can't move the curtain. It's simple, alright? He wasn't an accident. If he was a glitch, if he was unintentional, then like how would the ending even make sense? How would he put us in the Freddy suit, okay? We wouldn't crawl in there ourselves, right? We would just walk through the curtain and like nothing would happen because we wouldn't put ourselves in the suit. Like, come on, why was there another character there? No, did Glitch Trap replace them? I don't know. No, you know what? I do know. He didn't. He was meant to be there, okay? Since you can see this ending without collecting all 16 tapes, which would mean that Glitch Trap wasn't reassembled yet. There you go. Glitch Trap was an intentional feature in Fnaf VR. In at 8, MatPat is canon. Kinda. Thanks to the Fazbear Frights book Bunny Call and more so the story of In the Flesh, MatPat is basically canon in the Fnaf universe. Sure, it sounds kinda nuts that Scott wrote a mpreg fanfic about MatPat, but the crazier thing is that it makes MatPat canon in the FNAF world, in a way. Since his name isn't Matthew Patrick and he's working on a new FNAF game and not a new FNAF theory, but he's still MatPat's in-universe stand-in. While Daka or Markiplier may not be canon in the same way that MatPat is, it's still a thing. And you know what? MatPat ended up getting killed by a plush trap, actually a plush trap baby that crawled its way out of his stomach. I haven't finished the story, but I had to stop because I was cringing a lot. But I don't understand how he works on a video game and then it turns into him having an animatronic baby. I don't get it, okay? But hey, it's FNAF, and you know what? It's yet another instance of someone escaping from the game and entering the real world. However, this time it's Springtrap, which is a version of William Afton, so yeah, joy, great. Plus, there's the whole other mention of like the game theory sign-off in another Fazbear Fright story, which makes game theory canon as well, so no matter what way you slice it, it's a thing. And it's 7, not for us. The job of FNAF 6 was not meant for us. This was made clear by Henry in his final speech, saying, quote, "And for you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you." This begs the question, if it wasn't meant for us, how did we find it? Since if a job is created for one specific person, I feel like it would find that person, and maybe even only that person. But not like in a metaphorical sense, like, oh, this job was meant for me. No, like this job was literally intended for a certain individual, yet somehow Michael Afton found it and then got it over that other person. And we know that this is the case, since this isn't a pre-recorded message, and instead live. Since if it was pre-recorded, Henry wouldn't know that it was a different person, or that Elizabeth was the one that he had cut off as soon as he started talking. Quote again, "Connection terminated. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, if you even remember that name." End quote. And at 6, like father, like daughter. It's actually in the same speech where we find out that Baby has always intended on being an evil animatronic, even to her own brother. Quote from Baby's part of the final speech, "I will make you proud, Daddy," while talking about how she's gonna get us though. But why would she say this? She knows her father is there, actually. He's in the form of Scraptrap. So did Baby intentionally do this just so that she could become like her father? Did her death twist her mind in such a way that she now assumes her father will be proud of her if she was like him? Or is this something that William taught her? Because if we're looking for a reason his kids died, maybe it's because they wouldn't join in his killing spree? I mean, getting a kid to lure away kids is certainly easier than luring them away yourself. I mean, I don't know from experience, but I'm guessing. And is that why Fredbear's mouth was so powerful? Powerful enough to crush Crying Child's skull? Because William needed him to die so he wouldn't out him? Or at least put him in a coma and then put him back together, enhancing him so that he would want to help his father? I mean, it certainly seems that way. Maybe this is what Scott meant by nobody had solved FNAF 4. Halfway through in at number 5, intended owner. Who was the intended owner? It's a question I ask a lot in this series, ever since we figured out that we weren't the ones who were supposed to be running the FNAF 6 location. Who did Henry originally intend on giving it to? I think I finally have an answer. Scott Cawthon, or rather his in-universe equivalent who doesn't have a name, and since he doesn't have a name, I'm still going to be calling him Scott. So if Scott was the intended owner, there would have to be some form of connection, right? What could it be? Well, he's an indie game dev who made the games joking about the Fazbear tragedies because Fazbear paid him to do it, so he knows about everything that went wrong there, so maybe that's why. Henry's whole plan was to make sure that nobody remembered what happened with William and his misdeeds, so maybe he was going to bring in the one person he knew for sure knew everything that had happened. Maybe there was never actually a way out plan for him, and Henry just says that as a segue to inform us that he knows we ain't gonna leave. Maybe our character wanted to leave but just couldn't. I mean, the intentional owner being Scott's stand-in makes even more sense when you consider that Scott is the owner of the series. I mean, at least he was. So could it be him? Probably. I hope so. And 4, animatronic interference. But why did we find the job if it wasn't intended for us? I know why. Again, in Davy's portion of the final speech, she seems to imply that the job was meant for us. You think that this job just fell out of the sky for you? Well, yeah, it would have had to if it wasn't intended for me, right? Well, it may seem like Baby just doesn't understand what's going on. Let's think about it. Who is Baby? She's our sister. She's Elizabeth Afton. We see her get scooped, hence the stomach mounts on the FNAF 4 animatronics. I mean, we loved each other. We're family. And it's not like that went away. We went to sister location to find her. That's why we're here. She loves us and wants us to be a family again. The whole gang is back together. Us, her, and dear old dad. She interfered and sent us that job. That's why it didn't just fall out of the sky. It's because of her. This may be common knowledge or well known at this point. I didn't think about it until I was watching that speech over and over again for other numbers on this list. Baby is the reason we found it, and Scott was the one meant to have it. At least it seems that way. But that's just a theory. A game theory. Getting close to the end of number 3, hanging scientists. The sister location hanging scientists weren't there before they were revealed to us. It's meant to show us that Ennard is able to and willing to kill anyone who gets in his way, but that also means that there were people working here while we were there during sister location, okay? I don't know why though, since it literally is filled with dead animatronics. And the only reason we were sent there was to put her back together, like William had somehow asked us to do. That's a whole other story. Like, why were the others there? Okay, the business wasn't running. Like, is that what Chica's Party World was? Like, were we renting out the animatronics? But like, if we were, why were there so many still in the building? Especially when they were only used for a day. I mean, like, we know that Baby wasn't rented out, and we know why, but like, the others? I don't know, it's just weird, but hey, I'm not here to judge how someone runs their business. Penultimately, in number 2, blood on the cover. The security logbook is a real point of contention for the series. Whatever, okay, I'm not talking about what's inside the book content-wise though. I'm talking about how there are literal pages covered or splattered with blood, and the restaurant just gave it to you as if nothing is wrong. What the hell happened to cause blood to get all over these pages? And then, thanks to like the finish on the book's cover, it's shiny, meaning that it's still wet. Which means that it's new, and I'm prone to nosebleeds, alright? So like, I know that it's not a nosebleed. You don't lose that much blood, unless you're me, but that's a whole other story, okay? Why is the book covered in blood? Someone bled all over it. That's not even sanitary. Plus, you know, concerning, especially considering the reputation this place has. Someone explain it. And finally, in at number 1, Scrap Trap. What the hell happened to Springtrap between these games to cause these warps, okay? Like, sure, he was burnt in FNAF 3, but we see him alive and not damaged in Sister Location's ending cutscene. So where did all this additional damage and warping come from, alright? The head is bigger, the feet are larger. I genuinely don't know how this is supposed to make sense. This is something that I've been mad about for a while. Okay, I'm so confused as to what could have happened. Sure, maybe there's extra damage coming from like wild animals, maybe, while he has to punch him out like some sort of God of War scene. I don't get it, okay? How did the suit head get bigger? It's not like he evolved. And at 10, Ruin. We know that the main title of the DLC is going to be Ruin. Now, whether this will be referencing my opinion of the series or the actual state of the Pizzaplex is unknown, but based on the poster, it's possibly both, because the Pizzaplex looks absolutely destroyed. The Freddy statue from the lobby is in pieces, and there is plenty of rubble all over the ground, and you can see the walls next to the escalators are actually pretty banged up. It's not clear if this is exactly how the lobby will look, since this is just an illustration, not a screenshot from the game, but it is still possible. They could design the damage around this poster, or they could have taken a screenshot and then had someone illustrate it instead, which is entirely possible. But given that this is going to be released in 2023, I doubt that they have stuff made properly for it. They may still be working out the storyline at this stage. And at 9, Free. The name of the DLC may be Ruin, but I'm damn glad it won't ruin my wallet. Especially when the main game was oddly enough in ruins and still cost me $50. And this was before I started buying cheap frozen meals to feed myself, so I was pretty broke. But honestly, I'm pretty glad that this DLC is free, especially with the amount of mods that are probably going to come from it. And it's also probably an attempted apology from Steel Wool, since, like I said, the original game was so busted and unfinished when it originally came out. Did you know that despite being incomplete, the original game uncompressed was 86 gigabytes? That's a bigger game size than Skyrim, for God's sakes. That's around the game size, or like a file size, or maybe even a little more than Grand Theft Auto 5. That's absolutely insane. And now it's around 62 uncompressed, which is nicer, and it's 41 compressed. But still, goddamn, that's a lot for not that big of a game when you really think about it. And at 8, 2023. Yes, as I said earlier, the DLC will not be releasing until 2023, which is unfortunate, but it could actually be a good thing. Firstly, it gives me at least another 8 months of DLC themed content before it actually releases, if it is released in January and then the hype dies down for it. But it could also mean that the DLC will be even bigger and better than any previous one, like adding just a couple of more nightmare animatronics or a couple of more levels. However, this also raises the question of, is this the case, or are they just taking their sweet time because all of this is a free DLC? Like, can we really expect to play something huge for free? I doubt it. Like, the only reason it might be free though is because it's affiliated with Scott. But after Scott stepping down, I don't really know how Steel Wool would handle this kind of thing if they were doing it on their own, so I can't really say for sure. And at 6, Arcade Conspiracy. The Arcade Conspiracy gets its name from one of the duffel bags that you can find in Fnaf Security Breach, where we learn that something seems to be kind of off about this place. Yeah, I know, something's off about the Pizzaplex. How weird. Quote from the Arcade Conspiracy note. Exit interview. They are working together, the arcades. They are hiding something. The glitches. Glitch them all at the same time. Then the princess will recognize me. She's testing me. I am not yet worthy. The others are protecting it. Let me stay. I'm so close. Just one more night, please. I can save the princess. Now, it's clear that this seems to be referring to the Princess Quest games. However, it also doesn't seem like we have to glitch the Princess Quest games in order to actually get that ending. We just have to beat them and find them in order from 1 to 3. And then, boom, we save Vanny. So, what could this note really be referring to? Well, there are 3 arcade machines that seem to have mysterious glitches going on. The Balloon Boy World game that you can find in the theater in, like, Sun's little special hideout. Chica's Feeding Frenzy, which won't turn off even when unplugged, that you're supposed to be able to find in the bakery. And Monty's Golf A-Arcade, that according to its duffel bag shouldn't be in the mini golf area, but is. So, what's the deal here? Alright, what's going on with these games? We don't know because Chica's Bakery or Chica's Feeding Frenzy actually isn't implemented. We can't know. We literally can't play it. Halfway through into number 5, Dark Carnival. In the, I guess, technically still recently released FNAF spin-off game Security Breach Fury's Rage, if you go by release order and not date at least, you fight as one of the 4 Security Breach animatronics against a slew of enemies. These enemies include the Clown Springtrap skin from FNAF AR's Dark Carnival event. And not only do we see the actual character, we see the carnival in the background when the character is introduced. Clown Springtrap gets introduced in the 2nd level to the game, and while scrolling through the street, whenever the background isn't blocked by buildings or a fence or something, in the middle you can actually see the top of a tent, which is no doubt meant to be the carnival. Like, I don't know, okay? I don't know why there are so many Clown Springtraps there either, okay? I don't get it. Like, why are they after us? I also don't know. And Why we never see Magician Mangle or Ringmaster Foxy is another question, but it's still a nice little detail nonetheless, alright? I played through the game on the channel a while back, and I had a good time. I was finally able to wail on the animatronics that had caused me so much pain, so it was definitely a freeing experience. In it for coffee. In Fnaf VR Help Wanted, you can see multiple animatronics. Obviously, that's kind of the main point of the game. However, the most interesting one, at least in my opinion, is the secret animatronic of coffee, which isn't even an animatronic from the Fnaf series. It's actually from another one of Scott's games which failed, like every other game before Fnaf, unfortunately. But hey, at least Fnaf was successful. It's Coffee, and the game from which Coffee hails is called Desolate Hope, and in that game, Coffee is an autonomous service robot designed to tend to the needs of nearby humans. It's basically just a sentient coffee machine that actually makes coffee. Welcome to Yog Labs. Coffee can be seen in Five Nights 3 if you reload the level enough times, and it will just be sitting on your desk, unable to be interacted with, and won't actually make you coffee, which sucks, because when I'm freaking out, because, you know, a 60-year-old dude trapped in an animatronic is coming after me, coffee would actually probably help, but I'll definitely also need it if I'm working from 12 to 6 a.m., right? Like, that's for damn sure. Imagine Fnaf, but it's like real time and you had to do those 6 hours and you were only able to play it at midnight. Getting close to the end in number 3, Busted Chica. Now, when I make jokes about rearranging Chica's guts, this is not what I meant. Yes, that's right, my main girl Chica also makes an appearance on this poster as probably the most resilient animatronic in the group, because she's still kicking despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then a building and still having most of her smoking hot bod. Some of it was removed and cracked, but her face also has seemingly melted due to possibly the fire we were using to kill Burn Trap, or maybe just because a fire started in the kitchen when the building collapsed. She's also lost the lower half of her left arm, her left, not your left, remember that, don't make my mistake, and she's also lost her right leg warmer. The casing for her midriff and her right arm is gone, but other than that, she's fairly intact, at least compared to Monty. Also, interestingly enough, only Chica's white face melted, meaning that it looks like someone, spilt frosting all over her face. I guess that takes the term busted to a whole new level. But ultimately, in at number 2, Help Me. Very reminiscent of the Save Them minigame from the earlier Fnaf games, I'm pretty sure it's Fnaf 2. You can see Gregory's face on the bottom left monitor with the phrase "Help Me" underscore written in green lettering. This seems to me to indicate that we may have a potential plot idea brewing where we need to save Gregory and Freddy after the collapse of the Pizzaplex, but we know that Gregory and Freddy sit on the hill in the final shot alone in the true ending, meaning that if we do end up having to save him, our player character will most likely die in the process. This also means that we will not be playing as Gregory, but more on that in a moment. The underscore here could also be another indication of Gregory being a robot, but it could also potentially just be a reference to a file within the main game or within the DLC that could contain some secret information. But I have no idea if that's true, that's just speculation for the time being. I'm gonna have to look in through the actual Security Breach game files before the game comes out to see if there was an update that added one of those files, since underscores are primarily used for putting spaces in file names without actually needing spaces. Or it just could be that we need help in this case. Finally, in at number 1, Blondie. We do also see a new character on this poster, one we have never seen before. The little blonde girl holding the flashlight that is illuminating this entire scene. She's short, blonde, and wearing light up Skechers like the girl boss she is. But she is also presumably our player character, given that she is front and center. Now, as to whether we are looking for Gregory or if Gregory is looking for us is one thing, but I have a slightly wild idea that could help explain. The pigtails is very reminiscent of Baby, but this girl has blonde hair. And while we may not be able to see her face, I think that she may also have green eyes, because anyone with blonde hair makes me instantly think of Elizabeth Afton, who gets grabbed by Baby in 1983 and goes on to possess the animatronic. Now, given that we've made the comparisons of Gregory to Crying Child in the past, and the very familiar nature of this blonde girl, I think I have a reason why all these children have gone missing. Because they look like the original Afton children. Think about it. This girl looks a lot like the middle silhouette from the original Missing Children's article in the worst ending for Security Breach. And the rest of these children look similar to each other, at least using their silhouettes, because that's all we really have. Plus, look at her light up Skechers, okay? Red and purple lights. I'm sorry, but when have we seen purple and it hasn't been an indication of Afton? Plus, the red is exactly like Vanny's eyes. This has to be one of the 9 missing children, right? That got released thanks to the collapse of the Pizzaplex. Like, come on. That has to be it.